Okay, so welcome everyone to the fourth episode of the Vibe Sales Series podcast. And today we are with a very, very dear guest who is Alejandro Rodriguez, actually a former colleague at Salesforce. So thanks a million, Ale, for coming over.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's super nice to be here with you.
It's amazing, and I think we have a lot of things to cover during the session today. And I'd like to actually start introducing you because you've had a lot of experience in the sales world. You've actually been in the shoes of the account executive, not only at the startup level, but also at the enterprise level at Salesforce. Mm-hmm. And then you've actually continued in the Salesforce ecosystem. So can you please guide us a little bit on like, how did you get started with the world of sales so far?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, it seems like a long time when I started, more than 10 years ago. So my first serious job was in unpack. It was a Spanish startup based on the logistic sector here in Madrid. I started kind of like in a full cycle role. So I was responsible for the pipe generation, but also for closing. And it was super fun at the beginning, doing my first calls, my first deals. It was great, and that's where I really fall in love with sales. After that, I transitioned to Salesforce, where I did the whole account executive, let's say, career path. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to lead sales teams over there. And after that, I transitioned. This experience in Salesforce where we met actually was based in Dublin. So I transitioned to my home city where we are at today in Madrid. I have a couple of leadership roles in the startup world, leading the sales team at Nova, and now I'm Chief Sales Officer at Evolf, back in the Salesforce ecosystem, but now on the, let's say, the execution, the delivery side of business.
That's super exciting, and I really love to see profiles like you that have actually done the work themselves on what does that entail to actually sell to different companies, across different verticals, across different product portfolios, and I think you've actually managed to learn a lot from the different stages of the sales cycle.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the most remarkable experience, or the one that has shaped you the most over the last years?
Well, I mean, in terms of experience, I gotta say Salesforce, right? Like Salesforce is the best school for sales. That's where I really learned the importance of the process, the sales process. At the end of the day, you follow a sales process in order to minimize risks. Risk zero, it doesn't exist, but at least you minimize risks following the process. And in Salesforce, that's something they take really, really, really seriously. So that's where I learned how to control deals, how to control the process, how to manage internal and external stakeholders, and that's something that really taught me a lot from sales.
100%. That's super interesting. And I remember, like, you were not only at Salesforce, like, doing the role of account executive. Then I remember you were Service Cloud account executive.
Exactly.
Then you started managing teams. But you've also been very good at actually excelling and being a top performer, right? So what would you say has helped you have this success as an individual contributor as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. So it is true that I was fortunate enough to always exceed my targets as an individual contributor, but I always say that you can think about sales as a kind of like individual sport, but I gotta say that in Salesforce, it is really a team sport, right? So when I learned that, it's when I actually got to achieve my targets, right? Like what I have to say here is that if you ask a lot of questions, you're humble enough to ask for help. You involve your teammates. You involve people that obviously have more experience than you, and you really involve them in deals. You don't see them as someone that is gonna push back or challenge the way you do things. But like we all want the same thing, that is to close deals, right? So being humble enough to ask for help is what really made the difference, and that's why I couldn't do anything that I achieved in Salesforce without the team.
I think something quite specific or particular from Salesforce is that the role of the core account executive is, as you're saying, is a team sport. Because you actually need to manage and orchestrate an extended team that has that is specialized by product or by different parts of like the added value. So how did you manage to coordinate all of those resources in a smooth way so it did not jeopardize the deal?
It's not always easy, of course. As you said, in Salesforce there is a lot of players, right? I always say that the account executive or the core account executive in Salesforce is kind of like the quarterback, and you have like the whole team playing and going up the field, but you are the one that needs to control all the external resources. At the end of the day, I think it's important to have a clear vision of what the deal should look like and what resource you need at what stage, right? So it's important that you are very, very well coordinated with your mainly solutions engineer team. For me, the alignment that I had with my SEs, it was key because also we were identifying different situations where we needed to involve maybe, the cloud sales or the specialist or whatever. So that tandem, account executive SE, for me was crucial to execute deals in a proper way.
Okay, super interesting. And yeah, I remember those times together in Dublin. That was super stimulating, and it's a very fast-paced environment. And definitely something that I've also taken in my journey as I'm now building lifestyle. So I really like to hear that. My question for you is, how did you manage to take all of those learnings that you had both at the account executive level, but also at the manager level, and take those insights or this way of doing things, and then take them with you at Nova Talent or then also at Evolf? How do you manage to actually bring this culture and identity and know-how with you wherever you go?
Well, it's an interesting question because, so as I said at the beginning, Salesforce is the best sales school for me. But it's important also to understand that when you are a company like Salesforce, you learn a lot about the execution, but it is also true that you have all the resources that you need, right? So you have lots of specialists, resources, presentations, enablements, a lot of programs. So you might think that it's easy, right, to sell with all the resources. Then moving on to the startup world where the resources are not there and you need to create them, it's important that you have a clear vision on prioritizing, right? Like moving, like the transition that I did, you are going to identify a lot of gaps, right, that you need to fill, and you need to be able to prioritize what's urgent, right? What goes first, right? And for me, what it goes first is the team, right? Do we have the correct setup in order to achieve our goals? And then once you have the team, does the team have all the resources that they need to really exceed their targets, right? So that's, in a super general level, the things that I focused more on when I transitioned to the startup world. And now in Evolf, we are actually in that path, right? So we have a proven track record in the Spanish market, and what we are trying to do right now is to replicate this successful model at an international level. So that's what we're doing, right? Like take the playbook and apply it across EMEA.
Super exciting. Like, I think it's so valuable to actually have the playbook, because we've been talking with like more than 50 sales leaders over the last weeks and months. And we've been surprised that many companies that are actually they don't even have a playbook in their hands that they can actually replicate and scale. And so how did you guys manage to build this playbook first so you can actually expand into new markets across EMEA at Evolf?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, so some people tell you that they don't have a playbook, but they really do, right? But the thing is, like, they don't have a structured playbook that they're able to replicate and scale, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about experience, right? So Evolf is not a new company. We've been around in the ecosystem for several years. We have done, I think, more than 250 projects, and we learn a lot, right? Not all the projects goes well. So this helps you not only from a sales perspective, but also from an operational point of view. It helps you identify what works and what doesn't, right? So that's what we're trying to do, right? Like keeping a lean sales organization at the moment, being able to gain a little bit of traction on the different geographies where we're trying to expand, get the trust and the confidence from Salesforce, not only at an executive level, but also at an A level, and start closing the first deals, and also learn from the particularities from the different regions, right? Like it's not the same thing to sell in Spain that is to sell, I don't know, in Sweden.
100%. And something that I think is also very valuable is to, you were talking about 250 projects. Like that's actually a lot of know-how that you've acquired through the years at Evolf. And maybe for those in our audience that maybe do not know as much about what Evolf is about, you guys have a special focus in small and medium-sized businesses. So maybe could you explain us in like 2 sentences what is actually Evolf about and what's your value proposition?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Evolf is a tech consultancy based on Salesforce. We are part of the Dentsu and Merkle group. Dentsu and Merkle are the #1 media partners for Salesforce. So they manage all the media actions for Salesforce at international level, besides Formula One that goes separately. So inside of that branch, let's say, of customer experience management, they also focus on Salesforce implementations. Okay, so that's where we are focused, and we have a couple of brands, very successful brands in Spain. That is Omega, CRM, and Evolf. Omega focusing more on enterprise level, and we focus on SMBs and mid-market, right? Okay. So as I said, we started as a Spanish partner, but now we're trying to replicate it and expanding across EMEA.
Okay, super interesting. And how do you manage to expand across, like you were mentioning, Sweden or like the Nordics? How do you adapt to those special insights that are specific for those markets?
Asking a lot of questions, right? So what I've been doing since I joined is to try to align with Salesforce leaders and people that are already in the market to understand, what works, what it doesn't. Also sharing them our setup and how we do things, and asking them like honest questions on where do you think that we're going to have the most challenges in order to expand, and then taking feedback and trying to implement it internally, right? Is the only way. But yeah, from my side, trying to support the team mainly on the alignment with Salesforce. Yeah. So that's what we are focusing on now.
The talent of actually asking the right questions and listening as well, no?
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about that. And also Vibesell is about that, right? Yes. Being able to ask the right questions, right?
100%. We're super excited on this journey. And like one of the things that I'd like to ask you about is from your perspective, like you've been both within Salesforce, now you're actually implementing Salesforce, so you're still in the ecosystem, but from another perspective. How do you see all of the transformation happening in the market right now with all of like those systems of record proposing now AI solutions? Like what is a bit of your take on how the market is moving as well?
Well, I think it's a very exciting time to be in tech. Things are changing a lot. And you can see it in customers, right? Like everyone is like kind of like a little bit cautious on what's the next step that I should take in order to, go all in with AI and transformation. At the end of the day, I think AI here should augment, companies and employees. Of course, looking at sales, this is going to impact directly productivity, and it's going to be harder to be the best, right? Yeah. Because everyone will elevate themselves and their skills thanks to AI a lot. So to differentiate yourself is going to be harder and harder. And that's the game right now, right? Everyone's going to be super good. So now if you want to be the best, you really need to rethink processes, and you need to work a lot on how you are planning to differentiate. Because at the end of the day, AI drops the entry barriers for a lot of companies. So the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that are able to differentiate, even with, either with innovation, either with distribution, whatever. But that's the race.
It is a very exciting race, and I agree with you. It's an exciting time to be in tech, 100%.
Yep.
I think what you're saying is it like applies to companies on how you manage to differentiate yourself and like be on top of the race versus other companies, but also at the account executive level within a specific company, no? Like, yeah. If everyone is augmented by AI, what do you think that entails for like top performers to stay being top performers if everyone is all of a sudden like upskilled with new tools that help them be much better at what they do?
For me, it's all about how as yourself as an individual, how you think about your job and your process, the process that you follow. You don't need to go, to your manager or to your at an organizational level to ask these questions, but you yourself, okay, where are my bottlenecks? How can I be more efficient in my day-to-day, right? And it's all about thinking on those small wins that you can get easily right now with AI in order to make you better, right? And I think that's the start. Of course, at an organizational level, and we do this with companies in the AI projects that we have at the moment, and we help them to rethink processes and understand, where are the bottlenecks and how we can make everyone more productive. But I think this is applicable also at an individual level, and I think this is going to be a game changer for the AIs that are ahead of the technology.
It's very good insight. And yes, so Alex, how many sales reps do you actually have at Evolf?
Well, our organization is kind of, let's say, different of what you could think. So we have one rep per region, right? So you got to think about delivery companies or partners, Salesforce partners. The main piece of talent we have it on operations, right? So we try to keep it those employees that they are not actually delivering projects, the organization as lean as possible to maximize margin. So we have one rep focusing in Spain, another one in the UK, another one in North, and another one in Central. So 4 in total. And then there is a part of the team in the operations side that they are also managing existing customers. So I'm also aligned with them. They don't report me directly, but I'm also aligned with them on sales on existing customers.
Okay, super nice. And I'd like to ask you, for this sales team that you have in place as Chief Sales Officer at Evolf, what's the type of use case in terms of sales and AI that you're the most excited about in the next, year ahead of you?
I mean, I look at my own company, right, and our own process, and I really identify things that could be done and automated by AI, right? It's always important to keep that human in the loop, right?
Yes.
But yeah, from getting all the requirements from calls, then translating this into estimations of efforts, right? This empowers people in sales that they are not necessarily super technical in order to go ahead and understand the customer needs and translate it to estimation efforts, right? Because that's a big bottleneck, right? When we have someone that is not super technical but is customer facing, we need to go back and align with the team in order to prepare an offer. So that's a huge opportunity to automate and elevate the sales people in my team in order to be more efficient.
I love it. Is how do we manage to make someone that is maybe not as specialized or technical actually super pumped with the additional kind of pills of knowledge? Yeah, that's super cool.
Exactly.
You actually had a look at the vibe cell during a very brief call that we had together. What's your honest feedback or opinion on what you saw so far?
I think you guys are building something big. I really think that it solves real problems, real problems that every seller has or have had. It helps you, for example, I think about Evolf and our efforts to expand internationally, right? And we were speaking before about the context and the particularities of different regions. I imagine, the videos that we have in the team going with VibeCell and VibeCell telling them, different key aspects important for the region that they're expanding, right? So speaking about playbooks also, if you are taking a call and you're trying to prospect someone in Sweden, as we were saying before, it's important to know A, B, and C, right? And it, boom, right before the call. So I really think that you're building something big, and I'm keen to, negotiate with you at the end of the year to see if we can implement it in our tech stack.
One of the things that I love about VibeCell is that I'm actually selling to salespeople, and that's also very helpful because you're getting feedback every time you're actually showcasing the solution. You're also taking all of those inputs and improving the product as well. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And something that we briefly touched upon during the chit chat before the podcast is how do you also manage to actually create a platform like ours that is able to learn through a self-learning loop?
Yeah.
about each specific user, but also each specific company. And for us, that is just fascinating because then everything is dynamic.
Yeah, that's something super powerful. I think that's going to make the difference, right? Like it's a dynamic platform that adjusts to your business, and you don't need to adjust to the solution itself, right? I think it's key, and we see this a lot in Salesforce projects, right? There's a lot of debate now on the sales apocalypse, and or SaaS apocalypse, better than sales apocalypse. But at the end of the day, you will always need a context layer, right? That's what Salesforce and CRM solutions provide. And if you have a solution that by itself that lives in that context and gets better and better from your own reality and helps you selling better and selling and identifying things that work and replicate them, I think it's amazing.
I fully agree with you, and I think it's so crucial, right? Like CRMs are extremely good at being this kind of foundational database where all of this data lives, And what we've seen is like like for us at Vibesell, it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's like how do you leverage what other players like Salesforce are already extremely good at, and you actually augment the power or the capabilities of such platform. And yeah, so I definitely agree with you. It's like how do you manage to exploit this data as well as you can through the sales funnel? And yeah, something that I really love about your profile is also how you're getting always inspired from what you're seeing, like either as an individual contributor, as a manager, now as chief sales officer. So I'd be very curious to see from your perspective, what do you think like companies implementing Salesforce are doing differently today as compared to how they were doing that 3-4 years ago before all of the AI boom started?
Well, it's harder and harder to sell because people, so I remember back in the day when I started in Salesforce in 2019, we were speaking with small and medium companies with really low technological maturity, and that's the truth. And now you go out there, and everyone has some profile in the company that, like they're getting better and better at technology. So it's harder at the beginning to, let's say, change their point of view, but it's way more rich the conversation because you are able to rethink processes with people that know at least a little bit what they're talking about, right? So that's for me the main switch. People are getting more curious on how to do things better, and they're rethinking how they do things, and that's something that for us in Evolf, being a consultant, like a technological consultant, it's something that it helps us because we make sure that we're speaking the same language to the customer. And I think also people at the moment are kind of like waiting what's next, right? People are getting more and more anxious on what's coming next, and maybe next week's happening something that we don't even know today, right? So that feeling also, we get it a lot from customers.
Everything is moving so fast, and being as close from the customer as possible, that's what gives you this type of insights into where things are heading. So I'd be very curious to also ask you as we're kind of wrapping up, but you were mentioning you started at Salesforce in 2019, right? Mm-hmm. You were mentioning. So if you were to give an advice to the Alejandro who started in Salesforce or in big tech in 2019, what would you tell yourself as an advice?
Good question. I think I mentioned it before. I think we did pretty well. But if I were to give an advice, it would be to ask more questions, ask for more feedback. Because I see myself getting a lot of good things from the people that surrounded me when I joined, that, if I asked even more questions, you never know, maybe I would be like a completely different professional right now, right? So that would be it. And also, as we did, enjoy the experience, enjoy the trip, that it was amazing.
If you were to start at in sales today, and many people like out there are actually just getting started, would you join Salesforce as a company, or would you perhaps like go into some other players that are a bit earlier on their growth trajectory?
It's a hard question. For me, Salesforce, it completely changed my career, and it completely changed the way I looked at life, like also at a personal level, right? With all the connections that I made there. So I gotta recommend to join Salesforce. It is true that for me, it was great to have had that previous experience as an account executive, because I had kind of like more, criteria in order to learn and, accelerate that learning curve that you get when you join Salesforce. But yeah, someone starting in sales, what I do and what I tell them is just start, right? And don't think too much. Go on the phone, go with PipeCell, and you'll be the best.
I love it. And yeah, you were actually working also at Nova Talent, one of the biggest talent networks across Europe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, correct.
So my question is, how do you think talent should actually get enabled in regards to all of those new pieces of technology, how to leverage AI? What would be your advice for all these people going into the labor market so they can make the best out of AI in a sales career?
I mean, we have the responsibility to be always curious, and this is more important than ever, right? Because as we were saying, like things change super fast, and we don't know what's next, next week. So I would take this super seriously. Talent is living also a very interesting time, and I think Nova is seeing this very, very well, and they're going to be super successful for sure. But yeah, the talent war, as we were saying, AI is augmenting all type of profiles, so the talent war is crazy, right? So the same thing that we were speaking before about account executives or individual contributors applies to any sector, right? You gotta be responsible to differentiate yourself.
I'm based out of Zurich, and there was this guy who got an offer to go from OpenAI and join Meta, and he got a package of 100 million to join the company. And yeah, fully agree how talent can be extremely relevant.
Exactly.
Once you have this deep domain expertise.
Absolutely.
And yeah, perhaps the same is going to happen in sales at some point.
We'll see. We'll see.
Hopefully. So yes, thank you everyone. Alex, that was extremely interesting. I really loved every single second of the discussion with you.
Thank you.
We're very excited about keeping your journey very close from PipeCell. Hopefully next time, in a year from now, when we invite you back to the podcast, we already have all of these presence across the EMEA market and have gone from 250 implementation projects up to 500 or even more, who knows. But I'm generally very, very impressed by everything you've achieved, from like working in a startup, then to Salesforce, top performing there as an individual contributor, then also as a manager, then Nova, and now of course like the great trajectory at Evolf, which I'm generally very impressed by. So we're really looking forward to making great things together in the world of sales and AI. And again, thanks a million for joining.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Joel. Thank you for having me today and giving me this opportunity to share my experience. Hopefully it's helpful for everyone. And yeah, talk to you soon.
Thank you everyone, and see you in the next one here from Madrid at the PipeCell Series podcast.